Well, thanks for organising such a wonderful day to everyone who was involved in that. It's quite hard to bring together all the kind of richness of everything that I've heard today, but I'll give it a go. So to borrow one of Ravi's phrases, I feel like the question that I've been kind of thinking through most of the day is how together can we create a durable embrace where asylum-seeking refugee and migrant children and young people are protected and assisted to grow into adulthood. And I'm just going to share a few kind of themes that have come up in the conversations I've had. So first of all, we've talked about the importance of the roles of trusted and consistent adults that are engaged in young people's lives over the long term. We heard from some of the young people and from other research that has been done about a need also for love, care, and the sense of being part of a community and a family that's more than just practical assistance with appointments or legal advice and the provision of basic needs. So it's also trying to think through how, as professional adults engaged in these young people's lives and carers, can we offer all the multi-dimensional or holistic, whichever word you prefer, elements of support across asylum, welfare, well-being and social networks. And something that came up in our discussion group this morning was trying to balance a bit of a tension, I guess, between building these kind of professional relationships that, as Charlotte pointed out in her presentation, are often characterised by a desire to end a relationship when a young person may no longer need your help, whether that's as a solicitor or a social worker, with this desire to build long-term relationships between young people and trusted adults that are perhaps more private and informal. And it seems that some adults in professional roles do bridge that gap and offer both practical and emotional engagement. And some foster carers do this, but it's not necessarily required of them. So it can be very variable in the quality of support that young people get. And then this can also lead to a lack of clarity in the varying roles of adults involved in young people's lives. So again, we discussed in our group this morning that some foster carers and social workers are very engaged in attending Home Office appointments or going to solicitors, whereas others don't feel it's their role to get involved in that kind of support with asylum issues. And that can often lead to a gap in support for separated children with particular issues. And this is sometimes filled by charities and other organisations that offer advice and casework, but it can lead to situations where important deadlines for applying for extensions of leave can be missed. And we did wonder in our group, not having much experience of the guardianship scheme, whether that's something that could really help bridge that gap, although of course it's very important, as Ravi mentioned, that these roles are taken on by people who are competent and who are going to really engage with young people in these issues. We also heard some very positive experiences of foster care from Nasro this morning and from the research that Jim talked about. And that's really great to hear that so many young people are getting that support from their foster placements. But as was mentioned, it is a very small proportion of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children who are in these foster placements, and the vast majority in semi-independent accommodation, which can really vary in quality, don't get this level of support. And it's trying to think through how do these young people get their sense of family, community and belonging, and how can we support them in finding this. And it seems even more important when thinking about supporting these young people, or those that don't have the supportive foster carers, about thinking about how we, to borrow another of Ravi's terms, how we co-construct this durable embrace together. And it's great to have so many people here today who are supporting young people in various different ways, and really thinking about how we can always work together, especially during times of transitions, whether that's from young people going from primary school into secondary school, from having social workers to being with leaving care teams, or moving from foster care into semi-independent accommodation and getting support from key workers, and really thinking about how we can try to make sure that there isn't a gap in the consistency of support, and how as adult professionals we can try and build these consistent long-term relationships. We had an example from the Croydon virtual school in our group this morning about the need for those staff that are involved with under 16s and post 16s working very much together. From my perspective, I suppose what our organisation can offer is youth groups that are open to young people. We work with sort of 11 up to 25, so it's a provision that's there. Hopefully, throughout the long term, we've got a staff member that I've known now since he was 11 and came as an unaccompanied asylum seeker. And again, actually, in our discussion group, we were just hearing from Nasro about the importance of a volunteer mentor that she works with and meets with weekly, who provides another level of support that perhaps isn't available from elsewhere. And I think I'd also like to finish on talking a little bit about an example of working with other organisations that's really effective in my practice, which is the Croydon Young Refugee Network that some people in this room are members of. It's only been going now, I think, for about 2 years. When we first started working in Croydon, there weren't very many kind of youth groups or charities working to support young people in that area. But over the last couple of years, a lot of organisations have started offering services, and we meet quarterly. We have social workers who come, we have teachers, people from the Croydon Virtual School, and lots of different charities, and it's been a really great way of building partnerships. So it'd be good to think about. It's good to know if this is going on elsewhere and to continue this support. But thanks everyone for today. It's been great.
Right, I'm giving my thoughts here as a foster carer. I think the first thing that hit me today was that account of the young man who had a poor experience in care. And I found, as a carer, I felt quite hurt by that. Nobody should have a bad experience in care. I know lots of people do, but I feel personally hurt that somebody should have that bad experience, get all the way here and then not feel welcome. It's horrible. So, apologies from the carers of the world to the young people of the world. Second thing that sort of permeated through the day, and I almost tremble to say this, is the gender difference. Majority of the people in care, be they migrants or otherwise, are male. Bulk of the carers, bulk of the social workers are female. Just something to reflect on. Men start the wars and the women pick up the pieces. It's a stereotype, but I think there is possibly something there to bear in mind. Ultimately, I think what we would all like is not to have any migrant people at all. We would like them all to be happy in their own homes. It's a much bigger question than we can address, but if they could all stay at home and be cared for properly, wouldn't it be wonderful? Regarding the tension that there is for a foster carer between fostering our own homegrown young people and children in care and fostering asylum seekers. I foster for an agency, FCA, and we do get quite a few asylum seekers through our hands, so we've got a bit of accumulated experience between us. And it is difficult because we have our own children, homegrown children, who are, perhaps they've been in the system for a year or so, they're used to the fact that there are very strict rules. You have to get permission for them to do this, to go out on trips and everything. It's a very controlled environment. And then you get a young person, an asylum seeker coming in who has probably had a traumatic, horrendous journey, who has survived because they have had complete disregard for the rules, and that's how they've made it. And you're asking them to come into this very controlled environment and observe every rule that they can't see any use for. And that does create a tension. And I've, many a discussion at support groups, people have said, you can't, it's so hard to have both of them in the same household. We could do all of that sort or all of that sort, but mixing them creates extra tensions. There's a further tension, which is the something that we've observed as foster carers. There is a very visible split between the genuine unaccompanied children who come in seeking help and the older ones who come in pretending to be younger so they can work the system. And those latter ones really are a problem, because under any other circumstances, if you had somebody over 18 under your roof, they would have to be CRB checked in order for them to live alongside a foster child from this country. And of course, these ones aren't. And you suspect or you half know that they're older than they are, but nobody can do anything about it. The genuine asylums, so the younger ones, actually are a joy to foster. They've gone through a lot to get here. They want to be here. They're grateful for everything you can do for them. They've this is anecdotal experience. Other people may have different experiences, but the ones we've had through the office I work out of for our agency, they're just desperate to get on in life, get on in school, learn, get ahead. Actually, from a foster carer's point of view, very, very rewarding placements, and actually less tension there. There's one massive problem caring for these young people who turn up, and that's the language. My personal experience was of at 2:00 in the morning welcoming into the home a young man who I had been told was an Arabic speaker and actually wasn't, was Kurdish, and we tried to get some online translation on the computer just to sort of, find that, are you hungry? Would you like to go to bed? Do you want a shower? And he was sort of gazing at the screen, and eventually he said, no Arabic, Kurdish. And you think, there isn't anything online in Kurdish, or there wasn't then. So, and it persisted for a long time. What I would like to see is a far more formal approach to getting a bit of English instruction into these young people as soon as they arrive. There are online courses, or even offline courses. There's one company is Rosetta Stone. I think it was about £300 for a course of English as a foreign language, but it could be licensed to a number of different locations. You're not looking at £300 per child. And they are extremely good. They're interactive, they're visual, they listen, they repeat. Well-constructed courses, and I think I just wish more use could be made of that kind of thing. It would help things along faster for these young people. Finally, I think just a little anecdote, ways of getting it wrong. This young man who came in, my husband drove down to the asylum centre in Birmingham to pick him up after we had this late night phone call, as you do, and I thought, I bet he's starving, and I packed a bag of food for him. We knew he'd come from the Middle East, we knew he'd come from Iraq, so I thought, right, could be a halal issue. I won't put anything in that's sort of meat-based. So I got some cakes, some Welsh cakes, and some apples. And I thought, wherever you are, you can eat apples, This poor kid, he'd spent 12 hours in a refrigerated apple lorry and it was all he'd had to eat. So, there you are. The ways of getting it wrong are huge.